Hey ratbags, it's Jade giving you the lowdown on how to survive in 7 Days to Die on Xbox Series X. This guide will be really good for PlayStation 5 players as well, and even the PC wank race. I'm playing with absolute default settings. I'm going to take you through some of the biggest things you should be doing and the mistakes to avoid in the brand new version of 7 Days to Die 1.0. If you need to see a review of the game, if you want to check out some other guides, make sure you subscribe to my channel. You've got notification bell dinged, and let's go. So very briefly and quickly about game settings. Make the game easier, make it harder, you do you. I would suggest if you're first time playing 7 Days to Die or not played in a while, absolutely make the days a little bit longer or keep them on standard, maybe even make the nights a little bit shorter. Big change from this version and the previous version 7 Days to Die on console is that hordes don't necessarily start off easy. Now they're pretty much just straight on from the start. After 7 days of playing, you will get attacked by a massive horde of zombies at night time. By making the days longer, gives you more safe chance of looting and finding stuff and getting ready, and obviously if the nights are shorter, you won't have to deal with as many zombies while out and about or at your base. Now I'm playing on the stock standard nav map, so if you're playing on a procedure generated one, you definitely are going to need some more different types of tips, but I would say that there's a few things you need to know. A big part of the early game is completing some quests and then head into your first settlement. Follow the challenges. You can see the top one in the top right corner here. It's basically asking me to open my challenges map and take a look at what I need to do, which is effectively craft some tools. If they're completely greyed out, it means you haven't found them yet or unlocked them, or they're completed. If they're yellow, they're in progress, and if they're white, you haven't started. If they're green, that means they can be redeemed, but you do have to redeem manually. And that's an important bit because you will gain XP by redeeming, as well as getting enough of these in the run. So the basics of survival, complete all of these challenges, and you'll be directed to a trader to get a reward. Each line of these, like homesteading, advanced survival, that you complete all of them, again, you'll get a reward from the trader each time. Once you've done some of the basics of that first run, it will then give you the quest and indicator of where the trader is going to be. If you want to find more traders after this, and this is where it comes in handy for the random gen, you need to complete more missions for that trader. Doing more quests, more tasks for him, and once you've done enough from that same tier, he'll then give you the location to go and find Trader Jen. Do enough quests for her, she'll give you a location on the next one. So even on random gen maps, you will be able to find all traders, but you do need to spend some time completing all the quests, unless you just get lucky and come across one. Each trader will sell pretty much similar stuff, but they do have a bit of a specialist in stuff. So the next trader after Wrecked is going to sell more medical supplies. They are located in different biomes, and basically the progression of the game is going to get more difficult. So challenges and quests that they set you are going to be tougher, but you should start getting more rewards. There are 3 types of map you can play in 7 Days to Die. You've got the Nav-Z game, and that's static. So every location is going to be the same no matter what. It'll always be in the same spot. The traders will always be in the same position. Give or take a few meters maybe, depending on what videos you've seen of trader locations, they're always roughly in the same area. Then you've got the pre-gen maps, and these are static maps again, but they've been basically created, loaded and saved so that your PC or your console doesn't have to generate them. These pre-gen maps you can actually find guides for and maps, and they'll be relatively the same. Obviously they may need updating for 1.0, but they'll show you the different locations and places to go. What console doesn't currently have but is going to get by the end of the year supposedly is completely random gen maps. When you generate a map, it will be completely unique to you, and so obviously that's going to be a much tougher survival experience, although some players like it for the freshness. Anywho, back to survival, figure it's worth pointing that out. Basically, as quick as you can, get through some of the challenges, but also start making your way to any kind of building or house that you see. Especially if you stick to the main roads, you'll always eventually come across either neighbourhood of houses or maybe some more important buildings. Pretty Captain Obvious here, but by sticking to the roads you can start getting used to orientating yourself around the map, knowing where things are and what direction. But I find in these first few hours it's a good start to go ahead and craft the basics you need, like an axe, a club, a bed. Try and loot 1 or 2 houses, yes, even with some zombies inside, with the idea that you're just going to avoid a lot of them. You gain XP by looting, you lose XP if you die. While you get a lot more XP by killing zombies, unless you're equipped or used to the game, you probably are just going to get swarmed pretty easily. But thing to look out especially for in houses is in kitchens, looking for pots like I just picked up there. That's going to be vital in helping you cook food later. If you're hoping you can sneak up on a zombie just because it's got its back turned to you, think again. The actual way perception works in this game is it's a level that you can build up over time, and generally zombies will notice you even if they don't actually see you directly in line of sight. I wish I could say it was something to do with smell and the currents of the air changing or something like that, but really it's just down to a level that you can increase wearing different armour and putting points into certain skills and perks. You can sometimes get sneak damage on a zombie, but normally if it's in a room and it doesn't actually see you because of limitations of the wall. But they do respond also to sound, so that's why sometimes if you're sneaking up on something, that's how you get caught out. We'll talk about how to deal with them in a while, but effectively still keep aiming for the head, and you've always got a bit more reach than you might think, and always use a club rather than an axe to kill your first zombies. Clubs do a lot more stun damage, so you can knock them to the ground and get some more hits in while they're down. To the north of usual where you spawn, you will often find this town. It's got the Bear Den Inn, which is a very exclusive nightclub that you don't necessarily want to spend too much time in. In fact, anything with 3 zombie heads on it is probably way above your grade right now. Instead, focus on anything below that. With the goal being you need to loot absolutely everything, and always look up. There's plenty of cabinets up in this room that I bypassed the first time I came here, and I made sure I went and looted them all the second time. You can see I've been infected also already. That was an altercation with that first zombie that surprised me in the old house. You can cure that by eating some honey, but you won't get honey unless you're chopping away at tree stumps, and it's a pretty hard chance to get, so you may need to go and chop a lot of tree stumps down. The other side or way to get rid of it is simply die. You will lose a bit of XP, but as long as you put a bed down and you're not too far away from your bag, you can just run back and grab your stuff, and yeah, it's better than maybe dealing with your health basically not regenerating completely. That's eventually what happens with the infection if you just leave it unattended. Honey also only cures it if it's below 5%. But yeah, this is my top tip. Some players will tell you to go and literally start farming up resources to build yourself a base on day one. But I think it's worth taking a risk and doing a bit of rush looting at any kind of location you can find that isn't too dangerous. If there are simply way too many zombies, get the hell out of there. What we're looking here for specifically is books and magazines. It's the biggest new way that you're going to level up and unlock new gear in 7 Days to Die. Instead of unlocking new tool sets by progressing by using clubs or hammers or axes, instead you have to find specific magazines like Tool Digest, and eventually reading enough of them will grant you the next set of tools, or at least the ability to craft them. You can find skill magazines and books a lot in mailboxes and in piles of books, as you saw when we first came in, that I looted super quick. As you see me dealing with these zombies that all sometimes have different types of health. Guys wearing the safety hats will often have a little bit more health than some of the others, and the younger ones generally have a little bit less health than some of the other zombies too. Zombies you really want to avoid are the big fat men or ladies, and specifically any cops. The cops can fire some green bile at you that really does a lot of damage. So magazines are key if you want to progress fairly quickly. Also in the first few days, looting and finding food is pretty much going to be essential. And you notice that you can't loot any of the zombies. A big change is that you won't be able to do that anymore. Instead, they have a chance of dropping a bag that you can go and loot. But you've got to be quick because then bags disappear relatively fast. And yeah, the same principle applies. Loot everything. Once you've got enough resources that maybe you're over encumbered, start looking at what else you can craft. And pretty much anything in white, that's what you need. So get yourself a bow, get yourself a spear. Make sure you craft a storage crate and maybe start crafting some of the building blocks if you've managed to get enough wood already. It's all going to come in use much later. Don't forget, once you get your magazines, to go ahead and read them. And schematics are also really important that you read them because they often look like they're just an item, but you will notice they've got the same sort of book symbol, so make sure you read them so they don't take up space in your inventory. Reading the right magazines, so for Tool Digest and stuff, is also how you improve your tools to get a better quality of them so they've got more durability and do more damage. So when you notice that you've read a few books and it's increased your level, make sure you don't repair any weapons, and this is an old tip, go ahead and craft new ones, as this will give you the next level of that tool rather than just repairing the same level 1 tool over and over. You can then go ahead and scrap the old tools and you'll get some of the resources back. So the biggest killer in 7 Days to Die is getting swarmed and getting stunned. If a zombie manages to hit you, it can sometimes slow you down, and this is when you'd really have a problem. There's no block with a lot of these weapons or tools, so you really have to just aim for the head while they're always walking backwards. By default, click to run is on console. You may be able to turn that off in the settings, so bear that in mind as well. If you're running out of stamina a lot, make sure it's not because you're running. You can see the little symbol on the bottom left there next to my stamina. It might not be entirely obvious, but the purple bar above your hotbar down below, that's your experience, your progression to the next level. And talk about what that means in terms of leveling up your different attributes later. The green bar underneath the hotbar on the left, that's your food, and the blue bar is your water. So this way you can keep track a bit easier. I've been complaining a lot on PC until someone pointed out that this is what this shows, as I was like, where's my food and water level? Why do I have to keep going into the in-game menus to check my stats? Try to avoid your food and water dropping so that you either get dehydrated or hungry, as that reduces your healing. By default you will heal over time as long as you've got enough food and water in you. If you keep your actual stamina above 75% by drinking lots of beverages, that regenerates the stamina 15% quicker. As you're recovering your stamina, you actually start using up more of your food. If you become starving, that's when you'll start taking actual damage to your health, so you've got to pay attention. There's like 3 stages of losing food: hungry, very hungry, and starvation. Once it hits starvation, that's when you're going to start taking damage. And welcome to my first death. Hey, I'm a real player. I'm not always going to just show you that I'm amazing at the game, because I'm not. I'm learning on the job just like you, and sometimes you're just going to get wrecked because of poor decisions, and also not having the ability to get down ladders. But this is a good thing here because I'm showing you what happens when you die, and basically zombies will reset to their starting position mostly. You're given the option of course to go ahead and respawn near your bag or on your bed. I would always choose near your bag just to make sure you don't accidentally spawn in a room full of zombies again, and as you can see my bag fell through, and if we climb the roof now we'll realise that the zombies have actually reset back into their positions. But I figured I was over encumbered and it was time to get out of here. Little FYI on food as well, it does take up quite a bit of animation time, so make sure you're in a safe spot to go ahead and munch on whatever you've got. If your food says it's going to give you 10 food, it's going to probably take 10 seconds for you to actually munch through it and replenish your actual food bar. And it goes the same for any beverages and any healing items. There are so many different statuses and effects in 7 Days to Die that I won't bore you too much, but the general understanding is if it's yellow or red, that's a no-no. You want them all to be white. So you can see I'm over encumbered, but I've also had a little knife and fork sign there with a plate. That means I'm full and I've got a little fullness, a little buff, as well as I'm wearing some armour. So Captain Obvious, but do pay attention to that bottom left hand side for your statuses. You can check out more details as well in your actual character. You can see clearly on the right hand side the status effects. And if you want to see more info, click on the little bar graph at the top of your character's picture and it'll give you even more details about what kind of armour you're wearing, how much damage you're doing, etc. There are lots of shortcuts in 7 Days to Die, but do make sure you are holding the Y button or triangle button on PlayStation to access and see what some of them extra shortcuts are. So I've gone through the basics. You can see me redeeming the last 2 quests, and then once I've done that, it's finally going to direct me to the trader. Go ahead and redeem, and that's when it will show up with the notification, as well as unveiling all the next set of challenges, in fact the rest of the challenges for the rest of the game. With your bow and arrow, if you come across any lone little zombies, you might as well get some practice in, remembering that XP, the biggest and best way to get a lot of it early game is killing zombies, but ones that you can handle and not getting swamped. And yes, my aim sucks, but some of it is down to the game. This will increase and get improved upon the more that you use a lot of your perk points. Now if you've come across the trader before you've done all of them challenges, no problem, great, you'll be able to go ahead and maybe pick up a mission from him straight away, but otherwise I think it's a really good way to just go around, loot in safe areas or knowing when to run away if there's too many zombies, and yeah, having a ton of stuff on you, ready to start setting up a base or overtaking a point of interest. Everything relies on the Dukes coins in 7 Days to Die, and prices have got a little bit more expensive as devs felt progression was often with people just running away and buying everything rather than actually looting places. But here you can see a selection of the magazines that you're going to be reading, and you can take a look at all of these under the skill tabs and see what kind of books they are and what they'll do. I wouldn't necessarily waste your time too much trying to sell anything at the moment, although if you've got any kind of forged iron or anything like that you've managed to scavenge, you might as well sell that because you're not going to be using that for the moment. Likewise, any brass that you've come across, that's also a good early seller until you get more established. The best way to earn dukes early game is completing the quests. There should be 4 quests per day before they basically run out and he says he hasn't got any more work. That's a slight increase as it used to be free, but I think it's a last minute change that they've added. Pay attention when you're taking these quests to where they say they are. I kept ignoring this and wondering why I was running away miles to the other side of the map when my base was the other direction. Well, I could have chosen some that were a bit closer. Even if they were seemingly further, they were probably closer to my base. So it'll say west or east or south or north. So just bear that in mind so you're not traipsing too far all over the place to go and get some loot. Building a base from scratch or taking one over. I think there's definitely a good reason why you can do both. You've already got some tailor-made defences if you take somewhere over, plus all the loot that you'll get inside, and you can find some places with little lights like the fires or maybe even torches giving us some glow. The downside, you'll have to take care of any occupants inside, and it's not the best to defend once it comes to actually horde knights or any roving bands of zombies that will come across. But initially it's cheaper to go ahead and upgrade a lot of this wood into cobblestone if you really want some extra defences. I would say this house is relatively too large. You're looking for maybe a small one and maybe don't have it too close to any other houses. I did choose to take this one over and I took care of any zombies in and around the area, making sure you replace the doors at the very minimum and upgrade them. And yes, you can make any point of interest your base. So if it's got zombie skulls on it when you go into an area, you need to put a land claim block down and that should stop the zombies from spawning again in that base. You'll still get zombies spawn in and around the area, so you have to be careful what location you take over. For example, if you take over a military outpost eventually, then you still might have quite tough zombies spawning in and around the area. As long as you've got a land claim down, they shouldn't be spawning directly within a certain radius within your base. Know your tools. Clubs are for killing. Maybe getting your spear made, that's also a great option for a bit more range. Don't use an axe to kill a zombie. Use your axe instead to go ahead and harvest wood and stone. And although I'm clearing out a lot of these boxes and stuff, they don't actually give a ton of resources. Although look out specifically for beds to give you some cloth and any leather chairs you come across, which will obviously give you leather. Once you get a shovel, you can actually dig into pot plants and you'll get some soil or clay back. But yeah, a lot of the debris or props as they're called generally don't give you a lot of decent resources unless they're like electrical components. So things like microwaves, TVs and stuff, as they may give you lots of different types of components you might need. There's so many different types of zombies, and as the game progresses you will come across much tougher ones, especially when you start exploring. But the crawlers there are relatively easy to take care of. If you are taking over a house though, do make sure you've gone and explored every nook and crook of it so that you don't get any surprises. So I placed down my storage crate, I made myself a campfire and I'm utilising the glow from this torch, which actually does provide a bit of light during the dark. Always a good idea to build and make your main hub on a top floor. That way you can always remove some of the actual stairway blocks to help reduce a little bit of zombies getting up. They can jump and they can surprisingly climb certain things, so it's not always fail-safe, but it certainly will help. Now time has crept up on us, it's nearly 8 o'clock. At 10 PM that's when zombies will start running. You can change this in the settings, but at night time every zombie will run, whereas during the daytime only a couple might, and they're pretty much late game creatures. The sun will come up at usually 4 o'clock in the morning. You don't get any additional XP or anything for exploring at night time, so use that time to really get back to base and start crafting and planning out the next day. As said, plan out and make sure you've got some protection if you've taken over a place. If you built yourself just a little cube to live in, then that's okay as well, but I would say make sure you leave a space where you can put a ladder to get on the top of the roof and see what's around you. The benefits of building a base from scratch is you can do things like put proper foundations down that will be tougher to dig through, you can put trenches around and make the space just a little bit more manageable. But you will need more initial resources, particularly wood and cobblestone, to go ahead and at least upgrade, whereas at least with a ready built house you've got some of that. You could also make two types of bases, one where you've got a nice base and everything's laid out with all your loot, and the other which is pretty much just a raid base, which might be a cube with lots of trenches and lots of defences around it. Definitely needs a more detailed video, but unless you've boosted or made the days and nights much shorter, you don't need to worry about that just yet. Just be warned that this is something to consider later. So next up, let's take a look at the skill points and how to basically progress. So as I said, you've got 5 attributes, and each one of these is going to govern or give you more perks and buffs in certain things, like using shotguns or heavy weapons, or basically mining and harvesting resources. You're given 1 point in each of the 5 attributes, and then you can see I can go ahead and spend another point if I've got them on a specific perk within it. Some of the attributes you need to level up directly though before gaining access to some of the later ones. So I can buy this for sure, but won't be able to get quick healer until I've put another couple of points into my fortitude. In the early days, anything that's going to give you more resources, so I do think underneath the actual fortitude, it is worth putting some points into Motherload and -69. Any stamina boosts, as well as being able to carry more items, is always good too. And so if you've got yourself some food and water, now's the time to start thinking about looting the rest of the house, maybe if you haven't already. And if you did want to clear out some of the debris and props, you can do that too. If you see any dead corpses, try and get yourself a bone knife. You can get bones from hacking away at certain corpses that you find, or if you come across a chicken or a rabbit. And it's always better to harvest creatures using a knife than it is an axe. But in this instance, it was okay. You can see I've got 5 bones there. Anything that looks plastic is more likely to give you more plastic resources. Likewise, anything metal is going to give you iron. Some metal containers might contain actual steel, and this is where you can use the challenges later. Some of the quests might ask you to go and find and harvest some steel. If you click on that challenge and also track it, it will actually show when close by where items might have the steel inside. If you get any guests, it's best to go and try and deal with them, especially if it's only 1 zombie or 2. But you can see the damage that can happen if you just leave it. This guy nearly broke in, but I was lucky enough to take him out through the little gap. I'll bet it took quite a few hits. He was jumping up on top of the shrubbery that was around the house, so make sure you clear anything that they'll be able to climb on top of. Zombies operate on paths, and they'll find the least resistant path into your base. Sometimes that will be directly by going to doorways that have a direct path to it. Other times they may just look for the first weakness they can. So over a course of a few days, if you find zombies in the same spot, then there's something up with that, and you may need to reinforce it or clear out or put some more defences outside that path. This is especially useful as it will dictate exactly where your weaknesses will be on day 7 when you get the bigger hordes. You can have chances of zombies coming across in mini hordes. They basically roam around and you'll have 5 or 6 of them sometimes together. And if you come across a screamer zombie, you need to take care of them as soon as possible, because if they scream long enough, they will summon a ton more zombies, which can perpetuate as they will summon sometimes even more screamers, meaning you can have pretty much a horde night much earlier than day 7. Fingers crossed you came across a pot, as that will open up more recipes for you to cook, but you might not be able to make pure water without one. Certain food recipes need certain pieces of this before you can go ahead and craft it, even if it looks like you should be able to make it. So kitchens in buildings are your best bet to find a pot, otherwise you won't be able to craft one to get a forge, or you might have to buy one from a trader. There's a lot of resources you're always going to need, but obviously making sure you've got food and water is important. Save any medicines or any of the other things that you might find, like goldenrod tea. Some can cure infection, others will stop you getting infected or have a chance of getting infected in future. But that's the kind of stuff you definitely want to save till later on so you don't lose even bigger chunks of XP as you progress. It's not the end of the world if you die in the first few days. If you're infected but you haven't got any honey tea, there's not much point in using all of your medical stuff to heal you 100%, because eventually you're probably going to die from that infection unless you are lucky enough to get some honey from a tree stump. Or even rarer, find antibiotics. Spend the night going through your resources, sorting stuff out in your inventory, maybe popping outside to harvest some wood if you really want. Then back on the mission grind, taking part in whatever it is. You might need to find buried supplies, go and clear an area out of zombies, or find a special cache of resources and supplies to bring back. Now when you've picked a quest up, on your way to a quest, it doesn't matter if you die, leave it the next day. that's all good. The thing you need to be aware of is once you complete the quest, head straight directly back to the trader to hand it in. If you die in before that, you will pretty much lose the progress of the quest and you'll have to start again. Likewise, if you need to clear an area out and you leave the area, it will basically reset the quest and you'll have to go and pick up a new one. Sadly, you can't live in these trader settlements all the time. They will boot you out at pretty much 10 PM. But there's a fair amount of loot that you can grab from some areas. You won't be able to harvest anything within the zone, but there's lots of places to go and get some extra resources. So make sure you have a good look around every settlement. After you've done your first quest, you might get the offer of certain guns or weapons. I think the rifle is probably your best option. Taking care of zombies at range means they won't even get close to you and risk getting infected or hitting you. Otherwise, a shotgun could be good also for the last minute kills. I've got 2 rewards here because I've completed the homesteading challenge run as well. And I would say knowledge is power. Making sure you always choose magazines over just temporary stuff like food or water is important. Do make sure to go ahead and start the quest properly. It's pretty obvious, but you'll see the big exclamation mark. Be surprised how many people I've seen in the past say they don't know how to start it. You need to go up to it and then press the Y or the triangle button on the exclamation mark to begin the quest there. Also, a good idea to clear any enemies in and around some of these sometimes. If you're doing a dig one, you'll generally have some zombies come while you're trying to dig stuff up unless you're really super quick. Clearing enemies out often give you a nice cache of stuff. Pretty much you'll find boxes of resources and supplies as a reward anytime you have to do one of these. And yeah, aim to get at least 2 of these done a day. If you can get all 4, brilliant, but it doesn't leave much time to get anything else achieved. Your aim will always be more stable when you're crouched or using a gun or bow and arrow. Lots of melee weapons have a secondary attack. You can press the LT or L2 button to use it. It does usually use up a lot more stamina though. You can get sprains that often sometimes need splints to go ahead and reduce. If not, the more that you run, the more that it's going to add on time to you pretty much not having as much stamina. If you break your leg completely, you might need something like a plaster cast to speed up the healing process. Likewise, abrasions and cuts need to be solved pretty quickly too by using bandages. There's so much more to talk about. Really though, they deserve separate videos, like getting prepared for your first horde night. But there are still some basics. Block up any windows in a house if you have taken it over. The better way is to actually craft shutters. Make sure you put points into intellect and then you start looking at advanced engineering, as this will start reducing the cost of stuff to craft and make. Particularly when it comes to glue, which you're going to need a lot of to make your own duct tape, as duct tape can be hard to find sometimes. This is why you should never get rid of things like bones, as that's used to make the actual glue itself. Likewise, rotten flesh is going to help you when it comes to making crop plots and more later. The more points you get, the more you can start looking at increasing your cardio or your healing. I wouldn't be too laser focused on putting all your points into one attribute just yet. Mix it about and get things that are going to help you in the early days. I probably will do a separate video taking a look at all the perks and what I think is a fairly decent path to follow. And that's pretty much it. Take care of the different challenges from the traders. Eventually you'll get directions, as I said, to the next trader, and that will increase the difficulty but also the amount of rewards you get. You need 5 forged ahead magazines to go ahead and put a forge down, and that way you can start smelting and making more forged iron. And as soon as possible also make sure you put down a dew collector. If it's pink, it's not likely to generate any water. Seems pretty obvious, but as I said, it does allow you to place it inside, and it might momentarily look like you will be able to gather water inside, but no, put it outside. Big changes from PC, at least anyway, before 1.0 update was you needed a water filter to actually collect the water. Instead, it will just gather murky water now. You don't need a water filter to go and craft one. You can get additional little mods to put inside to speed up the process. But yeah, you should get 3 jars of murky water every 24 hours that you can then go ahead and cook and make clean to drink. Obviously, if you're really desperate, you can go and just drink water from a lake by having no item in your hands and then pressing the Y or triangle button. But you got a chance of getting dysentery and stuff like that, so it's not worth it unless you're going to go all out and eat all them sham sandwiches to fill a hole and then have maybe something that cures it like goldenrod tea afterwards. And I guess last thing I'm just chucking out now as I finish the video with the skills and magazines. If you want to find more of a magazine, put more of your points into that attribute that it says. So to find more forge ahead magazines, you need to put more of your perk points into advanced engineering or lockpicking. It will tell you this on the actual magazine, so you're never going to have to look up a wiki or anything. But once you start getting enough perk points that you want to start thinking about what you're going to work on, that is definitely something I would focus on. You will come across special books. These are different from the perk magazines. They'll give you outright perks straight away when you read them. So they might unlock a recipe or give you something pretty decent. If you find the same volume, there's usually 7 within each volume book of the book series, it will show you that it's been read with the book being open in the little graphic. So make sure you go and sell these books rather than read them again. You will gain some XP from reading them still, but they're better off being sold. And that's about it for a generalistic big starting guide. I haven't really covered like the very basics because the game does teach you that, and hopefully I'm getting that across to people. There's nothing worse when I watch a survival guide and they're literally telling you how to pretty much go ahead and craft some armor or make an axe. That's what the game does. So hopefully my tips have been a little bit more advanced than that, or explaining some of the systems that aren't as obvious. Like I said, I will be doing more detailed guides, and upcoming I have got a top 10 things more experienced 7 Days to Die players need to know. But if you need specific help with something, come and join my Discord. You can ask some questions there. We've got a 7 Days to Die channel set up, or pop it in the comment section down below and I'll try and get back to you. Until next time, ratbags, hopefully it's been useful, and I'll see you for more 7 Days to Die soon. Bye bye.